virtual reality. So a lot of us have heard about that and the role of AI. And we always thought it was in our kids' games for the most part, but that is now how business is being done. And our panelists today are going to talk about that in relation to leasing, and we're going to talk a little bit about buying today. But just to let you know, next week's call will be focused a lot more on the buying, and then Home Depot will be here again to talk about how to use their services even more fully during this time. So we're going to say thank you right now to our broadcast sponsor, Home Depot Pro. They have been amazing during this time to help us get through this and give us technology to communicate with you. But they're a normal benefit provider of ours, probably the most popular, because they have special programs for investors. Things like discounts on paint, 20% off at the register, rebates on your purchases, and other National RIA exclusive programs like appliances and cabinets. At National RIA, our vision is to promote, protect, and educate. We're a nonprofit association with serving real estate investors, and we've done so for over 35 years. We've got over 120 local chapters and associations and 40,000 members across the country. We want to say thank you so much for attending with us today. We know that you are very busy right now, but we're doing all that we can to make sure that we keep you updated and in the know in terms of what's happening during the COVID crisis and how to navigate those waters. We also want to say thank you so much for being a member of your local group and for supporting them during this time. I know they're out there trying to get you as many resources on the local level as possible, so your membership in that local means more now than ever. Here at National, one of the ways we're communicating with you and keeping you informed is with our website. If you aren't a member of a local group and you want to join one so that you're sure to have the resources that you need, you can just go here to find a local group on the website, click there, and it will give you a map of the US. You can find a local group there. You also have this button here in red that are the COVID-19 updates, and that will take you directly to the page that continues to change. Every week you'll see some changes. This week it includes all of the new guidelines that were announced just, I think, yesterday. And so you can see those updates. Charles is going to go through those in just a moment. And then you can see all the articles and other resources that we have available to you. Just to let you know, none of us on this call are certified, as far as I know, as an attorney, as a tax professional, or even a consultant necessarily in these areas that we're going to be discussing. It is just the way that we're doing business, the way we understand it to be true, and we're trying to just provide you with the best of resources that we're finding coming out from the most reliable sources possible. So let's get into kind of what we're talking about today, and somebody is drawing on the screen. So if whoever that is that's touching their screen, who probably has a touch screen, please stop. But we're going to go through slides really quickly, kind of to set the stage for what we're talking about today. One of the challenges that we were concerned about on the rental side is just collection of rent. And so that tended to be the biggest concern among owners. And as they were surveyed, 60% of owners said that they were really concerned about this issue. But on a good note, the NMHC rent payment tracker has found that as of the 12th of April, 84% of rents have been collected, and that compares to 93% when you compare them month to month at that date. So that's actually amazing, and I think we're all kind of taking a collective sigh for April. Who knows what May holds. We're hoping with stimulus checks and things of that sort that we will get through that with a still high collection of rent, but I think we're all feeling a little better than we were initially about what this may mean. As far as maintenance practices, right now, over 87% of the people surveyed said that they are performing emergency work orders only. 9% of the people are making no change to what they're doing, and 4%, sadly to say, are just decided to kind of put off responding to those requests until they understand a little better what the situation is. That is not, by the way, a good idea. Charles can talk about that a little more as we go forward, but definitely the emergency work order situation is definitely in place. As far as lease extensions and concessions, 30% are actually giving some kind of lease extension or concession right now. Most owners are not increasing rents and are allowing for short-term extension. If people had come up for renewal right now and did not want to leave, they're allowing them to go into kind of a month to month, but they're not reducing the rent. Many are allowing this, many of the 70% are allowing residents who are specifically affected with COVID to make some kind of arrangement with them. The big question is market disruption and how long we anticipate this lasting. 6% says 90 days or less. The majority are saying 90 to 120 days. Some expect even more than that. And that's why we're doing this today, because if the market stays disrupted that long, then we need to be prepared to continue business in some way. And that's why we have on the experts today to talk to you about how do you continue during this environment, and is possibly virtual leasing and tours and move in and move out something that you can feel comfortable doing. Right now, 54% of the people that were surveyed said that's what they're doing, and 21% say that they are doing in person, but they're using social distancing, mask, and other recommended guidelines during this time. Some are just not doing tours at all, and others, because they don't know how to do anything else, have just resorted to FaceTime as their way to help lease and deal with move in and move out. So as of now, I'm going to turn it over to Charles and let you take it away to give us a quick update, and then you can lead us into the panelists, please.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's another week. We've made it for the most part. We mentioned before about SBA and CARES Act and the different programs that are out there. One of the key things we said, get in line, get in your application early, because the money is going to go. It's gone. it's not even, it's going once, it's just gone. That's $350 billion gone. And they're looking to throw another $250 billion at it. By the way, the estimated request amount initially was actually that'd be 1 trillion. I'm saying 100, but it's 1 trillion. And my public school math says if you have 350 billion and you throw 250 more billion at it, you're still not quite getting there. So eventually, a billion here, a billion there, we start talking about real money. So they might actually get there in DC on this, but not yet. So what I want to do is really kind of share with you a couple of things. The first piece, and we put out some notices early this week. I appreciate Kevin and his insights into the program last week, and he shared with us some updates that we sent out on Monday and Tuesday. And those are really talking about, there are multiple regions for SBA, and they're actually handling their enforcement differently. There are caps that they put in place that were not part of the original legislation. Literally, we even reached out and tweeted, said, look, if President Trump, if the SBA can't get this correct, replace them and put somebody else new in, because this is not what the program was supposed to be. So we have been pushing on this. We are part of a national housing coalition that is doing this as well. And one of the things I want to share with you is along those lines, yes, there are problems with 3, but there's also phase 4 coming. And that's really where we're focused at. Phase 4 is going to be potentially up to another $6 trillion. And I say another because the first one was, headlines talked about 2.2 trillion. The reality is, with credits on the backside, it's somewhere between $4 and $6 trillion in cost of that bill passing. Yeah. I didn't think I'd be dropping the T word quite so often anymore, but that's what we're using. Wait till the hyperinflation kicks in and we're all using T words. But for right now, the expectation is another 250 billion coming in. As that comes out, it may be something quicker than the phase 4. If not, it'll be most likely part of phase 4. One of the pieces, though, that we're pushing right now, and we have it on the legislative page, we've emailed it out, it's in your roundup that came out today, is this piece that said, don't let Congress make the same mistake again. And the piece is this. On phase 4, one of the things that we are asking for is rental assistance. Now, you might say, why are we asking for rental assistance? The simple fact is, folks, we're part of an economic chain. If the renter doesn't pay for the rent, then there's a variety of things that split out from that, because the rent comes in and then it gets split out to, it pays employee costs, it pays contractors, it pays for everything from paint to mortgage. Okay, let's not forget the mortgage on there, the taxes, all these other things. That there's this domino effect that if the rent isn't paid, all of these items can't be paid. Then what happens? And then we start going into literally a catastrophic financial situation similar to 2008, 2009, where mortgage delinquencies start to jump up, deficiencies take place. We have problems, folks. And so our push is, look, help those who are struggling. We're reaching 21 million, 22 million unemployed at this point. Numbers could go high as 30, 40 million, depending on how long this goes and how much contraction there is. So hang on, we're on the that we've come over the crest and it's heading downhill. So we got to figure out where we're going with this. I say that to say, please follow through with the voter voice piece. Reach out, because this is an automated letter. It's already pre-drafted. It goes to your congressman and to your 2 senators, and it will share this message of make sure rental assistance is a part of it. Now, there's some other pieces to it that go into it. There's details up there. I'm not going to belabor all that, but it's already drafted. All you have to do is go in, send it, and out it goes. And that will send a message directly into the congressman's office. And let me tell you, if you try to fax them, good luck with that. Some of them don't even have fax machines anymore. If you mail it to them, if you were to try to print a letter and mail it to your congressman, typically what it does is it actually goes to Kansas and sits for 2 weeks, gets irradiated, and then goes into DC or the local office kind of thing. So this is one of the most efficient ways of handling it. Please go to Voter Voice, go to our Action Center. There's one page, or you can look at the roundup email that came out today. Just click on it, follow it through, and send that off. We need to make sure Congress does this and keeps the economic chain unbroken. So if we can roll back in our minds for a minute, I've talked about going back to February and January and thinking about there were issues about evictions and affordability. That eviction issue is still going. All but basically 2 states in the country have shut down their court systems. Evictions are not occurring. There are a few states, about 5 right now. There's potentially 6 or 7, depending on what you classify as an exception. But the fact is, most evictions are not occurring right now. And what we have to do is make sure that people understand that there is a need, not for the non-payment necessarily. And yes, there are going to be some people who sneak through and are playing games. If somebody says that they cannot pay, and I encourage you to reach out to your residents, talk to them, communicate with your contractors. If you're in a purchase or a sale, communicate, over communicate. Make sure you're getting that information out there. But if you have a situation, I want you to make sure you're reaching out to your local RIA leader. If you've got a situation where you've got somebody who's violent, somebody who is overdosing on drugs, selling drugs, there's been violence in a situation, make sure you get that story, get that police report, share it with your local RIA leader, so that in the event that there's a press issue, there's something coming up, they're able to reach out to their judges. They're able to reach out to your local media and talk to them and say, no, look, here's why we need, this is important because residents are being put at risk. I'm not talking about situations where we're saying, hey, somebody didn't pay this. There's not sympathy for that right now. Folks, workouts, do the workouts. This is all about being, move beyond transactional relationships. You've heard me say that. Focus on the human side, figure out what it takes to get through this. And as you saw the numbers that Rebecca put up, most people are paying. Most people understand it. Everybody's kind of tightening the belt and going, okay, what do I have to do to pay this and work through? There are going to be folks who need some workouts, work through it with them, document it, ask them to get from their boss, from their employer, some sort of documentation on why they're being let go, COVID related. Keep it, document it, and show it. But in the event that you have those type of situations where you need to evict somebody because of a violence or behavioral issue, document it and be prepared to share it with your local real leader so that they can address the issue with judges as well. So,
Charles, I have two questions for you.
sure.
One on the voter voice issue. I understand that we're, pushing for support of these bills. How is there anything that we can do, maybe in the way we write our letters, and edit those inside the voter voice program to address the fact that we do not want them to sneak things into the bill that don't benefit the immediate situation, that are pet projects and maybe things that we don't support, even though we support the overall idea?
You and 416 of the other congressmen would all agree, and the 17th being the one who wants that special project. Um, that's part of the sausage of it. If you don't want that in there, please become a congressman. I'm not saying that just totally in jest, but the fact is that's part of how the sausage gets made, folks. Reach out to your congressman on those issues. Tell them to stay focused. But our focus from an industry perspective is really just laser focused on a couple of these items. Telling them what they can and can't do is not going to get us our issue moving forward. And that's really our priority at this point, is to get this issue moved forward. So we're going to focus on that. I completely agree with the sentiment. And I know there's a number of congressmen up there who do. That's just not how it's going to happen, though, sadly.
Charles, next question. We talked about this multiple times, but let's address it kind of really quickly again. We have some guidance on the website, but if I have a tenant that tests positive in my multi-unit unit, what are the steps that I should take?
The health department will handle that. You are not up to communicating anything. That is you do not want to get into a HIPAA violation. Again, just as if somebody were to come up and apply and they have some sort of disability, you are not allowed to talk about that at all. Now, how do I handle going into a unit? We've got some best management practices online, and I recommend you look at those, from whether it's, if you've got right now, most folks are just doing minimal types of issues. So if it's an emergency issue, they'll take care of it. If it's a life safety issue, they will take care of it. That means maintenance folks going in, contractors going in, ideally people staying away, staying one room away, and let the emergency maintenance person come in, do the work that they need to do, and leave. That way you're minimizing, you're doing as much social distancing as possible. That is entirely different than saying, hey, I've got what's something minor. I got a scratch I want fixed on whatever, and the paint's coming up. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking life safety. Make sure you're communicating that with people as well.
And should they do anything in terms of specific cleaning? I know they can't promise anything. They shouldn't verbally say anything or put anything in writing, but are there actions they should take at least to try to do something in the common areas?
So that is a great question. And actually, I just sent to Lori a link with the CDC, and it is government recommendations for cleaning. And this is how to do cleaning. And just something, folks, that one of the things that struck me, I'll just share this with you real quickly, is if you are around somebody who is COVID-19 positive, one of the things it says is when you're taking off your clothes, or if you shake your clothes, literally the virus will come off the clothes. So that to me, I was like, I hadn't even contemplated that as a possibility. So remember, there's some new things to think about on how this particular particulate can be spread. So take a look. That's going to be going up on the website here shortly. I literally just sent it to Lori before this webinar started, so it'll be coming up there. But it's how to do cleaning, and it's CDC recommended cleaning. Do not use the word sanitize. Do not use the word, hey, I disinfected everything. Do not take on additional responsibility. Thank you, Lori. Appreciate that. She's got it. this is one of those things where you want to make sure you're not legally committing to something more than the basics. So with that, what I'm going to do is actually share this screen, Rebecca, if that's all right.
Yes, and while you're doing that, just to let everybody know, Lori put both the link in the chat bar and it is already on our site under COVID-19 updates under the CDC resources.
So the term is disinfect frequently. So that's a great thing. Use coverings, but I want to show you, this is what Dr. Brooks was talking about last night. This is something for employers. And especially if you've got employees, you're coming into an office, these are things to think about, especially this use and disinfectation of high traffic areas. That hits us in our common areas. If we have common space, whether it's commercial, residential, things to consider, okay? So let me set expectations if I can. Last night, the president spoke and talked about what it takes for the country to open up. With that, I want you to think about it in terms of, hey, we're getting out of this. Well, most places are at least May 1st before they actually are going to pass the gatekeeping test to start going into phase one. And let's look at what phase one really is, okay? There's not a lot of change from where most of us are at presently, okay? Minimize non-essential travel. It doesn't say no non-essential travel, but it's minimize, okay? On the business side of things, we really are staying pretty much the same for a lot of the population as where we're currently at. And that means 14 days at this phase one before we can head to a phase two. Phase two, I should mention that, specific types of employers, we're not going to worry about that part of it. Phase two, though, says this. We're going to continue the sheltering for some folks, a little more broader, but we're still maximizing social distancing, do some more travel. This doesn't start until at least May 15th, if your numbers are okay for your state. Okay? Close common areas. Okay? This is not, even in May, late May, possibly early June, we're still not having common areas open, things like that. So if you've got a quad, and you just got central areas, how you're cleaning that is going to be important. How you're handling it. Are you doing something or not? Making sure you're communicating. Maybe you've got a resident who will do some cleaning as well. That's a good thing. Make sure you're communicating that with your residents, okay? But I want to share that with you just to remember, sometimes we start talking about, oh, the country's coming out of shutdown. Here's what to expect. Well, folks, set your expectations. Not a lot's going to change for realistically 3 to 4 weeks yet. So hang on, breathe, and let's get through this. With that, I will stop sharing this and allow us to move on to some of the panelists, because you've got time now to do some improvements in how you run your business. The options, just like, how often were we doing Zoom meetings before this? So now let's look at some other things, like some virtual things. With that, Brian, I'll let you take it over here. Or Rebecca?
Rebecca, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Charles. Just to let you know, also that slideshow is already on the website. It's at the top of the page there, as I showed you earlier. So you can go through that and see what to expect basically through the 1st of May. And then most of those guidelines, I think, are going to keep us through the end of May for the most part until we get into phase 3 at that point. So knowing how important it is, because things are not going to change as much as we would like for them to in the next little bit, I'm going to ask David and Jeremiah to talk to us about how they are seeing things change, how they're working with virtual leasing, move in and move out. So I guess let's start with people who have come to the end of a lease and how you're handling those first. Jeremiah, do you want to hop in on that one?
So typically what we're doing, and I wasn't specifically prepared for the end of the lease question. I know Charles and I had talked a little bit about how we're handling move-ins, which would have only made sense for me to think about presenting a little bit about how we handle move-outs. But it's pretty similar. So let me specifically talk to move-ins. I think that move-outs will be a kind of a similar thought process. So when we're handling move-ins, so we have a couple of things. So we use a property management software called Rent Manager, and part of Rent Manager, one of their features is that they have an inspection template. You don't have to have an inspection template, but this is just what we do. So we can go to the property, and as we're filling out our inspection template, or for you, if you use a clipboard or Excel spreadsheet or whatever you use to mark down damages, we fill it out all on the computer, and we can take pictures and attach it to our inspections template. And then what we can do is we can actually print that off, or we can download it as a PDF. And after we have inspected the properties, we get the PDF, and we use a company called Dotloop. And if you guys are familiar, if any of you all are realtors, you're probably very familiar with Dotloop. All it is it's just a digital paperwork signing platform. So you can upload PDFs, you can drag and drop signature boxes into those PDFs, and then you can assign an email address to receive those PDFs. Whenever you send it to the email address, the receiver gets an email that says, hey, you've got a document on Dotloop that's ready to be signed. Follow this link. They click the link, they open up the document, they can read through the move-in inspection, and then they can digitally sign. So practically what this looks like is we will go through the property a few days before a move-in, and we'll do our full move-in inspection. We'll be super thorough. We'll add pictures, we'll download the PDF, we'll send it to the resident, and we'll say, hey, whenever you have time, stop by the property, and we'll have a lockbox on the front door. Here's the code to the lockbox, and we'll have them actually walk through the property and do their own inspection. And most of the time they don't care. They've got 4 guys in a pickup truck and a box of pizza that is cooling, and so they'll do a quick through the property, and as long as everything looks good to them, they'll go ahead, and they can do it from their phones, on their emails. They'll check the link, and they'll go ahead and sign and send it back to us, and we'll have it. Sometimes they might send additional pictures of things that we might have missed. In that event, we can upload those pictures into Rent Manager, tweak our PDF, download it again, put it on Dotloop. It's a very simple process. It sounds like a lot, but the key to it all is just a simple realtor's lockbox, having it on the side door or the front door with a key, and Dotloop. It's just DOT loop, Dotloop. And if you guys are interested in that, that's been really helpful for us regarding move-ins.
So I'm going to then kind of follow up on that for move-outs. A couple things. One, DocuSign is really pushing their product right now because they think it's a good time for it, and they're giving you some discounts, so that's available too. Possibly if you don't have Rent Manager, maybe you can use just Dropbox to share information with each other as well. Much of this can be done in Dave's system inside the dashboard, so I'm going to let him talk about that piece. On the move out though, so let's take what Jeremiah said and take that kind of one logical step further. Same process can be done on the move out. One of the things you may want to do is just take a phone and do a walkthrough with them and record it as you are on together. So you could do a Zoom call when you're on together and actually have that recorded. Put that in your Dropbox. And then what I would do, I am not an attorney, not giving you legal advice, but talk to your own attorney about this, but then having a sign off that first of all, they allowed you to record the Zoom call with them on it. And then is the first signature, and the second signature is that you've agreed with it, because you're going to have most of you for your security deposit, the refund of the security deposit has to be accompanied by a detailed list of items that had issues that you're going to be subtracting from that security deposit. Some of your states also are going to require an opportunity for the resident to walk back in and take a look at the list that you had provided to them under those security guidelines or the security deposit outline. The lockbox that Jeremiah was talking about is a great opportunity to do that. Again, all of those documents in Dropbox, then being able to use a lockbox on the front of the property to get in, or one of the things that we'll be doing a follow-up presentation on from this, and if you are interested in, before we get to that, let me know. Home Depot has a great relationship, and that means that we do, with Google Nest and with Lockly, and both of those products are amazing in terms of their ability for access. Lockly actually gives you even a one-time code you can use. Google Nest can give you multiple codes that do have expiration. So for your front doors, for your keypads, those are amazing tools for that. I'd be happy to get the information to you. If you're interested, just reach out to us here at National RIA, either info@National RIA or Rebecca@National RIA, and we could get that to you. So if you've got someone leaving, they're moving out, that's the process. So now you've got a new unit, you've rehabbed it, you've turned it over, and you're ready to lease it up. Dave, talk to us a little bit about how, couple things. One, if this continues and residents have a period of time that they're not being employed, this could affect their credit. And so how do they look a little differently at these 2 months if it ends up being late, or how is a landlord, should we look at that or report it? And then talk to us about your system and how they use it for virtual leasing going forward.
Perfect. Let me follow up real quick with a little bit of what you guys have been talking about. You guys are focusing really on, and I love technology, and you're focusing on the processes. I'm always focusing on the people and who you're going to rent to. So we had somebody last week come through our system. In our background report, we reported that they were still in prison. Our clients called us, thought we were at fault, saying, how can he be at my property and still be in prison? That's not possible. As we went through the whole procedure, they went ahead and looked at the property, but then because they never saw them, they applied with a different name. And luckily that different name was somebody who had a criminal history and was in prison. And when we came back and we said, you don't even really know who you're renting to right now because you're trying to keep such a social distance. In fact, you're not even getting anywhere close to them. My recommendation to you is to make sure you have ways of checking to make sure who you're renting to. And one of the Rent Perfect system does, one of the things the Rent Perfect system does, it gets their driver's license and it makes them pass 4 questions, and we can verify if they've answered those 4 questions right. If you don't use Rent Perfect and you're doing everything remotely, just make sure you get a copy of the driver's license. And I recommend somehow FaceTiming him or seeing a face who is looking at your property. The kid who applied was 20-something years old, but when he replied to someone who was born in 1972. When we requested the ID from him, he took the 72 and he tried to make it a 9 with a pen on an ID. So he had an ID on him, and it was a real verifiable ID. It just wasn't him. So I don't know if it was his dad, if he found an ID. And so just keep in mind, as we're doing this social distancing and changing our policies, we're not leaving those loopholes where we could get in trouble. Okay. So for me, just real quick, 60 days ago, I was on Easy Street. I mean, I was doing great, right? And I have short-term rentals, I have long-term rentals. And in one day I got a call and I had to refund $10,500 in short-term rental, VRBO, Airbnb bookings in one day. And it wasn't like I just lost the reservation. I had to go into my bank account and write back checks, which is tough for me to do, right? I mean, I already have the money and I saw that all go away. So I went ahead and turned those all into long-term rentals. And so what I'm going to tell you today, I have been doing personally myself. Now, with my clientele as a landlord, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the Rent Perfect system, I haven't found anybody out there that's willing to commit to a lease that hasn't physically seen the property in person. I don't know. somehow I haven't found a video or pictures good enough to say, hey, I'll take it right now. They always want to see where it is in town, the neighborhood, as I drive in. And so what I did is I went ahead and changed my onboarding process to, I'm showing up 10 minutes early. I have some Clorox wipes. I'm wiping down the doors. I'm opening up every door in the unit. And then I'm meeting them out front, keeping my social distancing, and I'm having them go into the property by themselves. I already have all the doors open. They shouldn't have to touch anything in the property. And then I'm having them come out of the unit and talk to me about questions they have, maybe criteria, policies, or things that they might have questions to. And then that is the only time I'm seeing them. But the reality is, as a private investigator, I want to see who I rent to. I want to know the person applying is the person that I'm talking to. I can just think of this last gal that came. She came with somebody with her. I wanted to know who is coming with you to the viewing, because is he going to be someone that's living there that you're not going to put on the application, right? And who exactly, what is the relationship? And so as a PI and seeing all this criminal history, all this bad credit in my career, I'm a little sensitive about who's going to be living in my unit. So I like to see them in person. I'm sure you can do that over FaceTime. I'm sure you can find another way to do it. For some reason, people want to see the unit. So I'm keeping my distance. I'm not going into the property with them. I'm not fighting myself through the doorways. If they have any questions, we're talking about it out in front of the unit on the driveway or the parking lot. Now, here's the great thing about Rent Perfect is all I have to do to start the application process is get their email address. And starting next week, all I'm going to have to do is get their phone number, which I usually already have. We're going to be sending them SMS text to invite them to apply at the property. Okay. They can then apply at the property. I get my credit. I get all that good stuff. I get my criminal background check. And then if I like them and all works out, I can send them the lease online. They can DocuSign. It's not DocuSign, it's through our internal system, but they can sign online. And then I send them an invite to do a move-in inspection where they go in by themselves with their phone and they go through each room and sign off on each room, take pictures. It all stores into our property. And then what the great thing is when I do a move out, I go in, I see the original pictures, I take pictures, put it right on their portal, and they can see in accounting, they can see all the pictures, and we never even see each other after that initial viewing. That's the Rent Perfect system. It actually was built not for social distancing, but it very well comes into play here about being able to onboard somebody by knowing who they are and what their history is. So to switch gears a little bit, I want to talk a little bit, how is this going to affect people's credit? Honestly, I don't think it's going to affect tenants' credit very much. And the reason is they took evictions and judgments off of credits last year. So credit bureaus are no longer reporting evictions on the credit bureau. You have to go to a screening company and get a separate eviction report, a separate court search for that. Interesting enough, if the landlord doesn't pay the mortgage for the rental, he's obviously going to get dinged because mortgages are reportable. And for those companies who are reporting rent like we do, we're only allowed to report positive. We cannot report negative. So you'll see a positive, say in March, a positive in April, and then you'll just see kind of a blank in May. You won't see a negative, and then you might see a positive again down the road. There is no negative reporting of rent on the credit bureaus I'm talking about, just so you know. So, but I think where really I'm telling our clients to really protect themselves is, number one, a residential verification in the future, today and in the next 2 years, is going to be super important. So if sometimes we get lazy or we don't do them, that landlord is going to be able to tell you something that the credit bureau isn't going to be able to tell you. And I'm not even saying if the people, you know, didn't pay rent that you shouldn't rent to them. I'm not saying that. I still have renters from 2009 that lost their home to foreclosures that have rented for me for over 10 years now, and they've been fantastic. So I'm not saying that an eviction in this circumstance is the same as an eviction 6 months ago when the economy's just killing it, right? We have to look at the whole story and decide, was this a circumstance or was this self-inflicted? And I think we're going to really change our view on evictions between April and maybe July, August, September. Now, one other thing I want to talk about with evictions is with this CARES Act, as we know, about 50% of the properties backed by federal funding, they can't even file a notice or go to courts. And as Charles said, courts are closed. Can you imagine what our court system is going to look like in August? July 26 is the day that I've calculated that all ends. The courts are going to be crazy in August. And if you think they couldn't pay their rent for $1,200, $1,500 1 month, wait till 4 months stacks up against them. And I don't think a lot of people are going to be able to pay that. So I think we're going to see a huge number of evictions in August. That means for you landlords, you're going to see a lot of apps in August, September, because they need to move somewhere. And doing a residential verification is really going to help you. And then also get the paycheck stub that people are giving you. Get their paycheck stub. Look at the dates and add up the totals. You can tell if they've been working, they've been laid off, or if they were just hired. And those two factors actually are going to be huge in the next 6 months to protect yourselves.
I agree. Jeremiah, on your leasing side, what are some of the other things that you're doing? And is anybody that either of you are aware of going kind of the extra step with the social distancing and using masks and booties or any of that if they are trying to be at the property during the showings?
Sure. So I'll talk a little bit about what we've been doing. So the technology that we've been utilizing, most people refer to it as self-showings. Typically, adversity causes innovation, and so you're not going to like the learning curve of these new systems and processes, but I can promise you guys that after all of this is over, you are going to be thankful that you've started looking into self-showings, because they're a wonderful, wonderful invention. So typically, so let me just explain a little bit about what a self-showing is. So a self-showing basically allows a prospect resident to walk through the property by themselves. And yes, that's terrifying, but let me kind of clarify how it works. So there's a couple companies who provide self-showing services, and I will paste the names of a couple of those into the text, into the chat, so you guys have a few names. So we specifically use Rently. So the way Rently works is you contact Rently, set up a profile, and they will send you a digital lockbox that goes on the front door of the property. Looks sort of like a realtor's lockbox, but it's solar powered, I believe. It may be battery. I think it's solar powered. So we put them on the doors to our property, and these electronic lockboxes are preloaded with like 10,000 different codes that will activate and unlock this lockbox. So you don't have to have wireless internet at your property to be able to use these self-showing lockboxes. So Rently sends us a lockbox. It's $30 a month per lockbox. They send the lockbox to us. We go out, we get really good quality pictures of the property, because we want our residents to be able to see a good representation of what we got. So we'll get good pictures taken. We'll put the lockbox on the door, and then we go into Rently's dashboard. It's online, and we create a listing on their dashboard. So we're putting in listing descriptions, bedrooms, bathrooms, square feet. We create the full listing on Rently's dashboard, and then Rently will actually push out all of this, the listing information, to Zillow, Zumper, Apartments.com, Apartments Guide. There's, I think, 15 different platforms that they push your information out onto. So then what happens on the prospect side of things is a prospect is scrolling through Zillow, and they see our apartment and they say, oh, this looks great. I definitely want to take a tour. So they click on the button, set up a tour. When they do that, we're sent an email that says, hey, John Doe is interested in touring your property. And then simultaneously, he would be sent an email that says, hey, we're excited that you want to tour this property. We use Rently for self showings, and there's a little bit of a description of what self showings are. And it says, if you're interested in setting up a self showing, click below. So he'll click below, and it takes him to a screen to set up a self showing. We'll pause that and just say, as a side note, often what we'll do is we'll go ahead and follow up with an email that says, hi, I'm Jeremiah. We saw that you're interested in our property. You should have gotten another email about self-showings. We're using self-showings right now because of social distancing reasons, and we can explain that as well. So you can follow up. You don't necessarily have to. So he'll go through, and basically what he'll have to do to set up the showing is Rently will require a picture of his ID. It will require him to take a selfie on his phone, and then it will require to pay a 99-cent one-time charge on his credit card. And basically what that does is it gets rid of any sort of spooky residents that might have malintentions towards your property, because nobody's going to want to upload an ID, a photo of themselves, and pay a credit card fee. And then they've got to agree to your terms of service, which basically states that if they steal anything or damage anything while they're at the property, that we're allowed to charge for damages. Charles asked me to talk a little bit about the upsides and the downsides of our system. One little snippet is that charging that 99-cent credit card fee is one of the largest upsides, because it gets rid of a lot of riffraff per se, but it's also one of the largest downsides because right now there's so many online frauds related to the rental housing industry and Craigslist ads and all kinds of weird things that people are hesitant to pay money to anybody without seeing them face to face. So a lot of times we're doing phone calls saying, no, it's legitimate, do some research, look up rently.com. They're very reputable. So from that point, they get a unique code that is specific to only them that will, it's one of those 10,000 codes that are pre-assigned to this lockbox, and only they can use it, and it only works one time. They go to the property, they type in the code, the keys are in the lockbox, they get the keys out, they go walk through the apartment. When they're done, they return the key, and on their phone, there's a little button that says, I've returned the key. So they return the key, and it says, if you're interested in this apartment, please go ahead and fill out our application. And in the Rently dashboard, we've already put links to our website where they can fill out applications. So from that point, the prospect can fill out an application and submit that through our website. So there's times where we might end the day at 5 o'clock and come back at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we've already had somebody who has signed up for a self-showing, gone to see the property after hours, filled out an application, and is ready to be screened. We've already got pictures of their ID and a selfie, and we've got an application that we can work through. So I think that, one concern sometimes people have is viewing hours. Rently allows you to set specific viewing hours. 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. is our hours. We don't want people there after dark. We don't want them there before sunrise. So you can set specific hours. So that's one thing that people are often concerned about. I made a couple other notes of helpful tips. As soon as people walk in the front door, we have a bottle of hand sanitizer and a box of rubber gloves. And basically what we do is we have a note that says, hey, please sanitize and put on rubber gloves. Don't touch your face. We have kind of a standard set of, this is the way we want you to handle this self-showing. If you guys have any local distilleries, a lot of distilleries are distilling hand sanitizer right now because the stuff that you drink is often good enough to kill COVID. So consider that. So we've gone to Northern Row Distilling here in Cincinnati area and bought hand sanitizer. We leave it at each of our properties. You can still pick up rubber gloves at Home Depot, last I checked. Let's see, I wrote a couple other helpful tips here. We have a leasing packet that we leave in the property. So a lot of the times, the job of a leasing agent is to answer your frequently asked questions. So we'll go ahead and put a leasing packet that says, hey, for this area, here's our average utilities as per Duke Energy. For this area, here's our average water bills. We'll put our pet policy, we'll put things to do in the area. We'll just highlight some of our frequently asked questions, and we'll just leave 20 different packets in the apartment and let each resident come, or each prospect come and take a packet. Just double check and see. One of the other nice things about it, this will be the last thing I'll say about it, is they're asked to take a survey after they walk through the property. And when they take that survey, we found that people are often much more honest about what they think about the property when they're typing in answers to a survey over a phone than they would be when we're seeing them in person. So we often get really helpful feedback about, hey, we really don't like XYZ about the apartment, that a lot of times if we were just in person, the prospect might have just said, no, we're not interested, and left. So that's just a kind of a side benefit to that. I think in regards to self-showings, that was a lot of information. It's super easy. I'm a detail guy, so I pack in as much as I possibly can. But I realized that was a lot of in the weeds, nitty gritty stuff that may bore you to tears, but really it's so easy. And there's a lot of people doing it. Rently, Show Mojo, Tenant Turner, all of those guys are really easy to work with. If you're interested, I would encourage you to dive in now instead of waiting till this summer, because if there's not already, there's going to be a run on self-showing lockboxes because everybody's going to be doing it. So get your name on some waiting lists. Go ahead and get some ordered if you're interested in it. That's not me endorsing anyone. I'm just a user. I am no way affiliated with any of the companies besides using Rently. But I would encourage you guys to get a move on if you're interested in using that technology. And Rebecca, I think, as long-winded as that was, that's everything I got to say.
No, I think that was great, Jeremiah, because it gave people an idea of what to expect. A couple quick things. We had some questions. People ask about having internal and external cameras at the property, just to see who's coming in and out. I think, again, I'm not an attorney, but if you're going to do that, I would post very clearly that you're doing that. So both on the outside and then in a couple places internally, this is being monitored by internal and external cameras. By entering the property, you're giving your release that we can use the camera. So, and maybe even somewhere, I don't know, Dave, if that can be on an application or come up as kind of a screen ahead of time for those people who are doing that. I don't know. As Jeremiah said, coming out of the process, there can be a link to the application. You can link to what Dave's doing there at Rent Manager at that point. And then Jack in our chat bar says maybe a post showing the instructions for what to expect and the instructions of how this is going to go should be something that you can leave there either at the front door or soon thereafter coming in. I tell you, we do banners here at National as one of our benefit that are very, very inexpensive. Having a pop-up banner for, Lori, I don't want to misquote, so if you could put in the chat bar how much we get those for, but a big pop-up banner right as you go in the door that kind of gives some of this information, if you're going to do it that way, would certainly not be a bad idea, and kind of pointing people on what to do next and kind of walking themselves through, I think could be something that could be super helpful. Dave, back to you for a couple questions. One, kind of tell me if I'm right about being able to link to your system coming out of something like a Rently, as Jeremiah described that process. And then we had a very specific questions from some Chicagoland folks about your system and the new issues in Chicago. And I thought I knew the answer to that, but I'm going to be very safe and let you answer it instead.
Excellent. The way the Rent Perfect system always, the way it works, it always keeps the property manager, the landlord, in control of who gets an invite to apply. One of the things that we don't recommend is you have an open link to everybody and you get multiple people applying. Since Rent Perfect's going to have you pay a $35 application fee to us, we don't want our clients sending invites to 5-6 people, paying the $35 for the same place. You know, that's just something I think is going to get you in trouble if you do that. If you do that, I would recommend you refund the $35 to, you know, the people that don't get the unit. So we don't have, we do have the ability to put a link on your website and have someone just sign up randomly, but we really, because we're a PI firm and we're really more concerned about you being close to your applicant, because we feel like you're getting a business partner, not just anybody. We actually encourage a closer relationship. And then once that relationship is, you know, they want to apply and you want them to apply, then we allow you to launch a text or an email to start the process.
So what if they did this, Dave? What if instead of sending them like out of the Rentley process, instead of sending them either to your system to do that, could they go to like a Google Forms as a post on the page to collect their information and then use that to send them the invite through your system?
Yeah, you can send the invite through email, through text, through Google Forms, any way you want to send the invite. We don't mind. We're pretty flexible when it comes to that. We just don't openly recommend you posting an application link anywhere that multiple people can submit at the same time for the same unit. But ultimately, if a landlord wants to do that with our system, they can. We just don't recommend it as best practices.
Okay. And then what about Chicago?
Chicago's great. I mean, you know, it's kind of like this COVID, you know, at first it hits and then we get scared and we go through this, you know, panic, and then we get our feet underneath us and we know it's not going to change. And so we adapt and we take technology and we adapt. And so right now in Chicago, we just launched it where we're breaking up the screening process into 2 procedures. And one is we're sending an invite out and we're getting all the credit, and we're encouraging our clients to do the residential verification, the employment. They can do everything in the whole system except criminal. And then once they pre-approve them, they go into our system, they say we pre-approved them, now send them the invite for the criminal history. They get on board. The applicant on their portal says, I agree for you to do my criminal history. We then complete the criminal history. The landlord gets the results and then has 5 days to decide whether they want to do an individual assessment. I say individual assessment or not, you don't have to do one if there's no criminal history, but if criminal history is found, then you would do an individualized assessment. And the nice thing about Rent Perfect is the applicant is involved in everything. They see their credit and they see their criminal history too. So they know exactly. So that's one of the satisfies the Chicago law, is that you give a copy of the background report to the applicant. Our system already does that in the portal. So they'll get to see exactly what we've reported. And the great thing is what we're seeing is a lot of the applicants are calling us at Rent Perfect saying, hey, this isn't right. You didn't report this right. The court has this wrong. And interesting enough, we're stepping in because we're the ones who found the criminal records, and we're satisfying a lot of that requirement, making sure everything that's on their criminal report is reported correctly. Now, you can only go back 3 years in Chicago. So we're only reporting 3 years, because if I tell you 4 years ago the guy had an armed robbery, you're going to freak out and you're probably going to make a mistake and not rent to him and violate the law. So on a lot of criminal screening reports we do, we give you as far back as you want to go. In Chicago, we're only going back 3 years, and it really doesn't sound like, well, wait a minute, I want more than that. I guess ultimately if you called me and you said, David, I want more than that, I'd give it to you, but I would recommend you not seeing after 3 years, because you're going to then make some wrong decisions and violate the law and get in a lot of trouble. So is it the best system out there, what Chicago's put out there for landlords? Absolutely not. Are we using technology and the best systems to get landlords through it in that area? We absolutely are. But there are still some things up there that we can't solve. And one of them is you can only look at 3 years of criminal history. And that's from date of disposition, meaning not dates they were discharged from prison, not dates they were discharged from probation. That means when they were found guilty or non-guilty. So they could be out of prison yesterday applying with you today, and if they were in prison for over 3 years, you cannot look at those records. So sad, sorry, Chicago, but that's what your legislature's given you.
I will take 2 seconds on a soapbox to say, and that's why you have to be involved with your local RIA, and your local RIA has to be involved on the legislative process, because that's a disaster. For landlords, that's just a very uncomfortable spot to be in. So quick question that I had not thought of. Once again, I just want to say that none of us, as far as I know, that are on this panel are attorneys. So careful, guys, as we answer this question. But on self-showings, you know, generally law says the person with the key has legal possession. What does that do with self-showings? Now, for what I was talking about, which is the Lockly product, there is no key. It is a touch screen process. The Google Nest product is a touch screen process. There is no key to hand over. So that is not an issue on that. You're not giving someone a key. Jeremiah, how do you feel about that with the actual lockbox process? Is it because of the documents they sign? I mean, obviously you've got 3 national companies doing it. They've had their attorneys look at this.
Yeah, and again, not an attorney, and it's been a while since I've read through that. Actually, if I said I read through all of the terms and agreements that they agreed to, I would probably lie. But there's a pretty substantial terms and agreements they do agree to. But my wager would be that this is so early in the leasing process. You know, there's been no leases that have been signed, no agreements that have been made. So if somebody tries to make an argument that they are the legal owner of, or the legal resident or occupant of the property because they were given keys to do a showing, I feel like there's pretty good grounds against that argument. Again, that's not maybe not the most proper response, but I think it's just so early in the leasing process that I don't think that would be a big issue.
And just really quickly to follow up on everyone that has asked, Lori put in the chat bar, the retractable banners I was talking about, $63 for ordering those. So if you go with just text and you don't need someone to design something fancy for you, $63 for those banners. You also, we will put links on the site for the Lockly and plus taxes and shipping, Lori reminds me. So 63 plus taxes and shipping. And we'll also put links on the website for resources like the Lockly and Google Nest products. Dan Kent asked, one of the concerns with self-showings is if the applicant looks at the property, follows all of the rules, returns the key, but leaves the doors open or unlocked for someone else to possibly get in, then what? I know something he asked, is that a benefit of Lockly? Yes, that it can tell if the door has not closed. Some of the others can as well. What happens on the Rentley side if they just don't close it hard enough or whatever, and the door is then you know, able to be entered from someone else? Do you have mechanisms for dealing with that? Like I said, we talked about potentially the outdoor cameras, handling that. Those are also a Google Nest product that we can put a link to. But Jeremiah, have you had any challenges with maybe people not fastening the door as well as they should on the way out?
Sure. Yeah. So that is a challenge. I think that to set up self-showings and to leave them for an extended period of time would probably be pretty naive. We typically go back and forth between showings, maybe not every showing, but every couple showings, to replenish self-showing guides, maybe to do some sanitization and things. I can't say sanitize, to do some cleaning. And I think that it's wise, you know, we're not using self-showings to totally abandon the leasing process. We're using them to social distance better, but then also there's other, you know, benefits, like, you know, you don't have to sit around and wait for no-shows and things like that. But it's by no means a totally hands-off process. I think it's a good idea to go and check after people do self-showings periodically and make sure the doors are locked and make sure nothing was stolen and make sure everything looks good. I can tell you we haven't had any trouble with doors being left wide open. You know, people that put their credit cards on file with us are typically pretty cautious and respectful. But that is one of the flaws to this specific method, yes.
And the other question is, what about staging rentals when they're being self-shown? Have you had any challenges of any of your staging materials that happen to maybe look really nice in someone else's house, walking off with them?
Yeah, so I would be very cautious with staging. The things that we typically put in rentals, we want to be taken. So, you know, we'll leave snacks. We'll leave a platter of snacks. Thus far, we have not had our Walmart platters be stolen yet. We will leave, you know, we'll stock the refrigerator with every type of colorful soda and juice that you can think of, so that there's a big, beautiful wow factor when they open the refrigerator. We want people to take those. We might put a dog dish in the kitchen to show that we're pet friendly. But besides that, we're really not putting lamps, couches, rugs, you know, anything like that. We might put a couple colorful towels in the kitchen and bathroom, but we're really not putting much of value into our rentals when we're doing self-showings.
Awesome. Yeah. We've had some classes on cruise where people are talking about, instead of setting up a real bed, they use cardboard boxes under that to show, one, because it's just more portable when you're having to take them to the next unit to show, and things like that. But that's another kind of topic that we can cover. Also,
Rebecca, can I make a point? Sorry, Rebecca, can I make a point? I love how Jeremiah says, don't think that you're abandoning the property. I mean, don't think you can abandon the property, right? I mean, because we've seen it where people go to these 3 big providers, they leave a door unlocked, they put an ad on Craigslist, they actually act like they're the owner of the property, and they start selling your property on the side because they can get access to the back door. So I would make sure, just like Jeremiah said, just to back them up, saying, don't think you can abandon it. I would be there every day, every other day, and I would double check and make sure your place is locked up. So I don't want landlords out there to think that you can just totally abandon this whole process. You still need to be very close to your property.
we actually had, Dave, someone on cruise that came up to us that had that challenge that happened to them. Also, Jack Seals says, you know, they had someone open a window and unlock another during a showing. We literally we weren't self-showing. It's just that we don't tend to walk through the whole house with someone when we show. And we had gone back, and we always go back and check now, but I don't even know why we had done it that time, but realized that they had gone to another room and opened a window off the back deck. I mean, we were in the property with them. We were just not following them, and realized after the showing that they had done that. So that happens whether you're self-showing or not. I agree with both David and Jeremiah. Go back and check that property after the showing to see what's going on. Probably right now a good idea to maybe go back and clean a little doorknobs and such, in case they don't use your sanitizer and gloves in between, just to be a responsible person. John Schaefer also says that he's used a self-showing system for 15 years. He's even done showings when he was in Russia. He just has systems built around that. So, you know, he's been doing this for a long time, even pre-technology, and just something that as time goes on, you're probably going to get more and more comfortable with. Just make sure you're using caution, being responsible to yourself and others as you're doing it. Any other question, guys, as we go through here? I want to thank everybody again so much for being on the call. My panelists, thank you so much. Let's see. They ask where the banners are from. They're through Build-A-Son. And to get access to discounting pricing, just log into your members area of the local group or to Nationals for the link to be able to make that order. So if you want to access those, that's how to do it. Ron, I'm going to turn it back over to you now as we're closing up. We went a little bit over, Tom, but I think all of the information was very valuable. Thank you again for being on the call, guys.
Yeah, so thank you to all of our presenters, Charles Tassel, David Pickron, Jeremy Hines, and Kevin Coughlin. We appreciate all of your guys' input. And, you know, of course, we always love seeing our Rent Perfect guy here. It's been a little while. It's been since last year at mid-year. So it's good to see you, David. So thank you guys again for the time. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, of course, to Lori Hudson and to Rebecca, our executive director, for putting all of this together and all of their hard work. Everybody have a safe and enjoy the weekend. Just, you know, try to do something to enjoy. Let's not make it all sound bad. And we will see you guys next Friday at 4 p.m. We will be sending out those emails for that registration link, which will also be on the National RIA website as well. So stay safe and healthy. Thanks everybody for coming, and we will see you guys next week.